channel. And on today's video, we are looking at the brand new COROS Pace 4. And just like the COROS Pace 3 before it, the COROS Pace 4 offers probably the best value sports watch that you can get. Right? And by sports watch, I kind of mean running watch, but it does so much more than that. Anyway, that's what we're talking about today. I have been testing it. I'm going to tell you all about it. Let's get into it. Alright, thanks for sitting through that intro, guys. And here it is, right here. Oh, by the way, COROS was good enough to send me this Pace 4 for the purpose of review. However, they haven't told me what to say. They don't have any editorial privileges, and all the thoughts and opinions on this watch are my own. But I've got to say, it's a pretty good watch. And if you have had a Pace before, I don't think you're going to be surprised to hear that. Now, let's start with a negative, an unsurprising negative, but a negative nonetheless. The price has gone up. The COROS Pace 4 is now $249. Okay, so we've got a little bit of a price bump, but that's really not surprising. On the plus side, COROS has actually dropped the price of the Pace 3 to $199. And you know the Pace Pro, I don't have one on hand to show you, but there is a Pace Pro. COROS has also dropped the price of that to $299. And I guess I'll be talking about some of the differences between the Pace 3, the Pace 4, and the Pace Pro as we move through this video. But basically, this is a solid update, even though they do look very similar from the outside, at least when the screen isn't on. Because the Pace 4, in a nutshell, is brighter, it's faster, and it is just more capable than the Pace 3. And I'm probably going to say this a couple of times in this video, I don't want to steer you away from the Pace 3. In fact, if you only have $199 to spend, I still think the Pace 3 is the best value at that price point. But I gotta say, if you do like some things, I think you are really going to think that that $50 extra for the Pace 4 is money well spent. But let's get into it. This is the Pace 4 with a silicone strap. This is how I got it. I will probably be replacing the silicone strap with a nylon strap because for my running watches, I just prefer nylon straps. I had the Pace 3 with a nylon strap and it just works better. So that's just personal preference. So do with that information what you will. But the Pace 4, when it has a silicone strap, weighs in at 40 grams. It is extremely light. Now, you put a nylon strap on the Pace 4, that weight drops down to 32 grams, which is really, really light. The Pace 4 has a 1.2-inch display, which is the same size as the Pace 3, and this is how it looks on my wrist. I think the biggest upgrade of the Pace 4 over the Pace 3 is that COROS has introduced an AMOLED display, which is fantastic, right? I mean, it just looks bright, it's fresh, it's exciting, the colors pop. And the Pace 4 is using 390 by 390 pixels, and that's up from 240 by 240 pixels on the Pace 3, but the Pace 3 was a memory in pixel display. This is an AMOLED display, so it's like comparing apples to oranges. Pace 4 has a 22mm removable watch strap, really easy to take on and off. Another huge upgrade for the Pace 4 is that COROS is now using a 3-button design. Okay, we've got this rotating bezel right here at the top. We have the back button on the lower right-hand side, or I guess you can position it however you want. So I should just say that the back button is on the same side as the rotating bezel. Then on the other side, in the lower right-hand corner, in the configuration that I wear my watch, is the action button. And the action button is configurable in the app, and you can use this to access a couple of different things. So for example, if you wanted to access the maps, you could do that. However, I think now would be a good point to tell you that the COROS Pace 4 only features breadcrumb navigation, right? That isn't a big change from the Pace 3. In fact, it's exactly the same. The difference between the Pace 4 and the Pace Pro is that the Pace 4 has breadcrumb navigation and the Pace Pro has full offline maps. So when you pay that $50 more for the Pace Pro, that's kind of the upgrade that you're getting. Now, if you have been paying attention to COROS over the last couple of months with the Nomad and the Apex 4 and now the Pace 4, you know that the Pace 4 is now featuring a microphone. And this microphone is going to allow you to take voice pins when you're out on an adventure, and it's going to allow you to record training logs at the end of your workouts. Now, after you have recorded your training logs or your voice pins on the Pace 4, there is no speaker on this watch, so you can't listen to it back, but those voice pins and training logs get synced to the app. So I just finished the COROS running test right here, knocked out a total of 5.68 miles. Now, to add your training log, you're just going to scroll down to here where it says RPE. You're going to click this button, you're going to see how it felt. Yeah, that was a hard workout for me. Now we have this and we can press record. So you can see right here on the bottom, it is now recording, and this is where I'm going to record my training log. So for this workout, this was a really tough workout. I think I did start off just a little hot. When you have done with your training log, you're going to press the tick. That is going to save it just like that. And then when you go onto the COROS app, it is going to be transcribed and you're going to be able to send these voice memos, these training logs to your coach, or just keep it for your own benefit to know how hard you pushed on a workout. If you just take a brief look at the back of the watch, COROS COROS has added a new heart rate sensor. New means better, right? But we are going to be looking at some of this heart rate data, at least in my experimentation with it, in just a few minutes. So hold tight for that. And of course, we are going to be comparing it to some other watches. Oh, if you wanted to add like MP3s or audiobooks or podcasts, if you wanted to add those to the watch, you certainly can. There's 4 gigabytes of storage, but there are also media controls. So if you wanted to run or bike and have the media that you listen to on your phone, you can just control that from the watch. Okay, let's talk about battery life. Look, COROS has done away with the standard GPS. The standard GPS was where you had to choose like one GPS satellite constellation, and that was the only one it would connect to. Now, with the COROS Pace 4, the lowest standard of GPS connectivity is high GPS. And basically, that means that the COROS Pace 4 is going to connect to the best satellite constellation wherever you are in the world. And with Pace 4, in the high GPS mode, we're going to get up to 41 hours of GPS tracking. Now, okay, there is a little caveat to that, because if you have the always on display on, that GPS battery life actually comes down to 30 hours. And the always on display is not the bright AMOLED display that you see now. That times off after a second, and then you have a little outline of a clock. Just briefly, let's compare the Pace 4 to the Pace 3 with the high GPS mode. And remember, the Pace 4 has a maximum of 41 hours of GPS tracking time. The Pace 3 had a maximum GPS tracking time of 25 hours in high GPS mode. Let's move on to dual frequency, because that is what I have been using this watch in all the time, right? Dual frequency is the pinnacle. That's what we want. We want to be able to lock onto 2 different satellite constellations at the same time to provide next level positioning. And I know it's really not needed unless you're running through like tall trees or tall buildings, but I use it all the time. And the Pace 4 can use dual frequency navigation for up to 31 hours. Of course, that goes down to 24 hours if you have the always on display on, and 12 hours if you're listening to music. Now, if you were to wear this just every day, it will last up to 19 days. But here's where I want you to pay attention and know the difference between the Pace 3 and the Pace 4. Because the Pace 4 has an AMOLED screen. It isn't on all the time. The Pace 3 has a memory in pixel display, which is on all the time. So even though the Pace 4 at 19 days of daily use is more than the Pace 3, when you have the always on display on the COROS Pace 4, it goes down to 6 days, which is definitely not as good as the Pace 3. So that is the one area that you are giving up some battery life with the Pace 4 over the Pace 3. But that is just the downside of an AMOLED screen. You know what I mean? It just takes a lot more battery. And if you have it on all the time, it's just going to be sucking that battery all the time. Personally, I think it's a worthy trade-off. I think a lot of people are going to just love that AMOLED display. We already mentioned it, but you know, I'll tell you again, the COROS Pace 4 does have breadcrumb navigation, and basically it's a line on a black screen, which on its own, maybe not very useful. I mean, it does show you where you've been, but if you load a route into the Pace 4, it is going to show you where you're going. So I think for a lot of us that, you know, rarely use mapping capabilities on our watch, that's totally fine. It's there if we want it. If we want to load a route, which is extremely easy, onto the Pace 4, it will actually tell us where we're going, but we don't have those turn-by-turn and street-level directions where we do on the Pace Pro. Of course, the Pace 4 is going to bring you the whole COROS ecosystem, and that's going to include workout plans, workouts themselves. You're going to have the COROS Evo Lab, which is going to give you like recovery data, how fatigued you are, your training load, your race predictor, your VO2 max, your threshold zones. Of course, you can set alerts for pretty much everything. Your cadence, your distance, your pace, your HR, your power. Yeah, the watch does a lot. It does track your stress. It's going to track your calories. It's going to track your exercise time. It's going to tell you the weather. Of course, that comes when you sync it to your phone, but the watch itself is going to tell you the weather. You can find your phone from the watch, and you can find your watch from the phone. And you can get notifications from your phone on the Pace 4. It tracks tons of sports, including multi-sport. So of course, a bunch of different kinds of runs, bunch of different kinds of cycling, gym work. But if you are a multi-sport athlete, like a triathlete, yeah, you're going to be able to start a triathlon, mark the swim, mark T1, mark the bike, mark T2, and mark the run. The Pace 4 now features menstrual cycle tracking. And like all new COROS watches, COROS is giving you the little charging dongle. It's a little something like that. And basically, there's a hole in the end, and it fits a USB-C. So you don't have to take a proprietary charging cord with you everywhere you go. I think this is actually pretty genius. It locks right into the back, and you just plug a USB-C cord in to charge your watch when it's needed. Okay, I think we will look at some comparison data now, eh? Let's start with sleep. And on this night, the COROS Pace 4 had me sleeping 9 hours and 10 minutes. My Cinto watch had me sleeping 9 hours and 29 minutes. My Apple Watch Ultra had me sleeping 7 hours and 25 minutes. And my Garmin had me sleeping 5 hours and 26 minutes. Now you might be wondering, Matt, that's just not very close at all. And you're right. And I can only tell you that when I was wearing all these watches to bed on that night, I was a little under the weather. So there was probably a lot of tossing and turning going on. And I think that is the reason for the discrepancy. But now I should tell you that I think sleep tracking on these watches, you know, it's definitely more of an art than a science. So don't read too much into it. But let's have another look, shall we? On this night, the Pace 4 measured that I slept 8 hours and 4 minutes. Sunto measured my sleep at 8 hours and 17 minutes. The Apple Watch Ultra measured 8 hours and 37 minutes. And on the other end of the spectrum, Garmin measured 7 hours and 24 minutes. Again, bit of a spread, not as big this time, but the same thing. I think I was still sick. Now, on this next night, when I'm getting better, the Pace 4 measured my sleep at 6 hours and 57 minutes. Sunto measured my sleep at 7 hours and 7 minutes. The Apple Watch Ultra measured my sleep at 6 hours and 48 minutes. And the Garmin measured my sleep at 6 hours and 50 minutes. So all this is just close enough for government work. I like it when all the watches line up like this. Okay, but the sleep, you know, that's using the heart rate monitor. That is just measuring us or measuring me as I'm sleeping, as I'm moving around. I try and keep them all very tight. You know how it goes. But GPS is not actually counting anything to do with me, right? The GPS chips in the watch are just talking to the satellites in the sky. So let's look at some comparisons here. Now on this day, my Sunto measured the longest distance at 7.51 miles. The Apple Watch Ultra measured 7.5 miles. The Pace 4 measured 7.46 miles. And Garmin measured 7.35 miles. I'm a little bit surprised that the Garmin was so much lower. Usually I find that Garmin and COROS are right in line. But still, these are all fairly similar. They're all dual band GPS watches that I'm testing. This next run is a lot closer. And on today's run, my COROS Pace 4 and my Apple Watch Ultra both measured 7.65 miles. The Garmin measured 7.64 miles, and my Sunto measured 7.62 miles. And finally, on this day, my Apple Watch Ultra measured 7.24 miles, my COROS Pace 4 measured 7.22 miles, my Garmin measured 7.21 miles, and my Sunto measured 7.17 miles. So all in all, everything is lining up where it's supposed to be. And I like it when everything just comes together and it's all very similar. It's very comforting. All right, let's look at some tracks and some heart rate data. All right, my friends, let me just put up on your screen right now well, it's a map, and it's got several overlays of the several different tracks of the GPS watches that I'm using. Unfortunately, these maps haven't been updated in several years. I mean, this area that you're looking at now is just totally developed, but it looks like when the satellite shots were taken, it was all just sand and under construction. But everything actually looks quite good, except for the yellow, which is the Apple Watch Ultra. And that seems to be having a very hard time, just like running all over the place. Except for that, the COROS, the Garmin, and the Sunto seem to be just very similar. And of course, there is a path along the lake right now, but if we just come up here, just kind of scroll a little more. Yeah, you can see where the path is. In fact, as we get onto this path right now, you can see it's basically the same story. It's following pretty closely. Now let's take a brief look at heart rate tracking. And we can see here right in the beginning, obviously this is, if you've been following any of my videos and you know when I review Sunto watches, they seem to have a very hard time in the beginning. Then that's exactly the same here. We have a big jump in the beginning from the Sunto watch. Everything just kind of stays in line for the most part. And we can see on this screen that the COROS is the purple. And if we look right here, we can see that at the beginning of the run, the COROS did spike up for just a minute before it dropped right back down to maintain an acceptable heart rate, right? At least acceptable when we're talking about other heart rates. But right here, I'm going to extend this a little bit. This is where I did some intervals. Now, they were very short intervals, I think maybe 30 seconds. But 30-second intervals are very difficult for a watch to maintain the difference in the ups and downs of the heart rate. And the COROS did struggle here just a little bit. And case in point is right here, and then down here at the end. This one, it looks like the COROS was measuring me at 165 beats a minute, and this one here is the Garmin, which was measuring me at 158 beats a minute. So, you know, the COROS is only 7 beats higher than the Garmin, but just because the COROS is an outlier here, I'm going to say that the Garmin is probably the more accurate one on this exact interval. Now, the Garmin I'm using is the Garmin 965, and we can see it seems to be about the best here in tracking these 30-second intervals. But when we are just running normally, yeah, everything is pretty good. It's all very similar. But let's head over to another example. Now, on this example, I did a warm-up, then I ran some tempo miles, and then I did a cool down, and you can see that trend with the graph right here. We can see that, you know, the Sunto did what the Sunto does. It went high in the beginning before it settled in, but on this graph, the COROS is in red. So we can see there are a few peaks coming along here. We maintain as we build up our speed, and then when we get to this section, which is the faster section, now if we look at this peak right here, we can see, oh, this is pretty high. The COROS Pace 4 is up at 174 beats a minute. And if we look at, for example, the Suunto was measuring 152 beats a minute and the Garmin was measuring 154 beats a minute. So this really isn't doing anything valuable for us. It's clearly picking up on my cadence as I am picking up the pace. And then it kind of repeats, you know, all the way along this far section right here, drops down a little bit here, and then peaks again. Now, if we do look at it from like a macro perspective for the entire run, yeah, I was going to say that it actually looks pretty good, but from the COROS perspective, it doesn't look too good. There are a lot of anomalies on this run. Okay, but let's just head over to another run. We'll look at one more example. And on this run, this is a steady state run with some pickups towards the end, so just very short pickups, but we can see that the COROS didn't immediately lock onto my heart rate. It looks like the COROS is doing what the Suunto watch often does. But anyway, the COROS was picking up, I would imagine, no, at 160 beats a minute. It wasn't even my cadence, but it was jumping up just a little bit higher in the beginning, and then it maintains just coming along. We've got a little peak right here, and got a little peak here, here, and then at the end there are some other peaks. Now, the funny thing is that this is where I picked up the pace, and it looks like the COROS was probably the only one that was picking up my heart rate correctly in this section of the run. However, I was doing short intervals, so even the COROS is not picking up my heart rate just, you know, spot on. So I suppose what the lesson is here, at least the lesson to me, is something that I've known all the time, and that is that optical heart rate sensors are not infallible. Do you know what I mean? They are going to go wrong at certain times, and of course the COROS is the one we're kind of picking on in this video because that is the review that I'm doing today, but each of the watches have not been ideal. There have been dropouts and peaks, but you know, even after looking at all that data, I still feel that COROS has one of the best heart rate tracking monitors out there, even if the data from the 3 runs that I have used as comparisons kind of shows something different. But I would say that the best thing is that COROS is constantly updating their watches. They push out firmware updates, they fix things. So your COROS Pace 4 is going to get better and better with time. So guys, now I want to hear from you. Have you run in any of the Pace series? Did you run in the Pace 3? Do you have the Pace Pro? Are you thinking of picking up the Pace 4? I'd love for you to drop a comment and let me know. But for now, it's Matt B. This has been my review of the COROS Pace 4. Be kind, be happy, run well. See you in a couple of days.